All right, let's just jump right in. In today's world, knowing what stuff you have, and more importantly, what's actually valuable, well, it isn't just a good idea, it's basically a survival strategy. We're going to be talking about your very first and maybe most important line of cyber defense, classifying your data and your assets. So let me just ask you this straight up. What do you think your company's most valuable asset is? I mean, really think about it. Is it your office building? Your inventory? Maybe your team? What is it? Because, there's a really good chance it's something you can't even see or touch. We're talking about data. It is the absolute lifeblood of almost every modern company, which of course makes it the #1 target for attackers. So here's the game plan for this explainer. First, we'll cover why you just can't protect what you don't know you have. Then, we'll figure out how to identify your critical data and ask the big question, who's actually responsible for it? After that, we'll get into building digital walls, learn a really tough lesson from the infamous Sony hack, and finally, chart a clear path to becoming more resilient. The biggest problem for so many companies right now is just the unbelievable amount of information they're juggling. It's like a digital tidal wave. And honestly, if you don't have a plan, you're pretty much just crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. And that really brings us to what might be the single most important rule in all of cybersecurity. It's simple. You can't protect what you don't know about. If you can't point to your most important data and say exactly where it is, you're operating with massive, dangerous blind spots. Okay, so how do we start to fix this? Well, it all begins with asking a pretty straightforward question. What is our critical data? Answering that one question is the very first step to turning all that chaos into some kind of order. Now, the fancy term for this whole process is data classification. But don't let the name intimidate you. It's really just about organizing all your data based on two things: how sensitive it is, and, way more importantly, what the real-world damage would be if that data got out. We can basically break down that impact into 3 levels. A low-impact loss. Think of it as a minor inconvenience, maybe a headache, like a public phone list getting leaked. Moderate, now things are getting serious. We're talking real financial loss, maybe some public embarrassment. But high impact, that's the stuff of nightmares. That's catastrophic, potentially leading to total financial ruin or in some cases, even loss of life. And what's so fascinating is that the definition of critical totally changes depending on what business you're in. For a tech company, it's the source code. That's the secret sauce. For a hospital, it's patient health records, no question. For a law firm, it's all about that privileged attorney-client info. See? Context is absolutely everything here. All right, so we get it. We need to classify our data. But whose job is that anyway? This is where things can get really fuzzy for a lot of people, especially when you start throwing the cloud into the mix. So listen, this is a really crucial point. This is not just a job for the security team or the CISO. Deciding what data is critical, that's a business decision, through and through. It has to be driven by your legal, compliance, or data privacy teams, the people who actually understand the business risks. The security team's job is to then take that strategy and build the tech and policies to enforce it. Now let's talk about the cloud. Generally, we use it in one of 3 ways. You've got software as a service, or SaaS. That's when you just use a finished product, like Gmail or Salesforce. Then there's platform as a service, PaaS, where you build your own stuff on a platform someone else provides. And finally, infrastructure as a service, or IaaS, where you're basically just renting the servers and networks. Getting this is key to what comes next, because this is where things get really, really dangerous. A survey found that over 76%, 3/4, of people believe that the cloud provider, Amazon or Google, is responsible for security. And that is a massive and potentially very expensive misunderstanding. And this chart illustrates exactly why. It's called the shared responsibility model. Here's the deal. The cloud provider is responsible for the security of the cloud, but you, the customer, are always responsible for your security in the cloud. Just look at the chart. See the parts in red? Customer data and access controls. In every single model, that's on you. Always. No exceptions. Okay, so now that we know what our most important data is, and we know that we're the ones responsible for protecting it. So how do we actually do that? Well, this is where we start building what I like to call digital walls. Now, there are 2 terms that people mix up all the time: subnetting and segmentation. Subnetting is all about making the network run better. It's for efficiency. But segmentation? That's 100% for security.
It's about using firewalls to create these isolated zones or little digital rooms and being super strict about who and what can move between them.
Let me give you an analogy. A flat network is like a giant open plan office. If one person comes in with a cold, what happens? It spreads to everybody really easily. A segmented network, on the other hand, is like building actual walls and putting locked doors between all the different departments. A problem in one area gets stuck there. It's contained.
Now, to really understand why this matters so much, we have to look back at one of the most famous, or infamous, corporate hacks ever. This is the cautionary tale of what happened to Sony Pictures back in 2014.
The timeline here is just brutal. The bad guys got in months before anyone even knew, using simple phishing emails. They just sat there, quietly moving around. Then, right after Thanksgiving, they dropped the hammer. Ransomware locked up everything, terabytes of data got leaked, we're talking unreleased movies, embarrassing private emails, you name it. The entire company was basically shut down, forced to go back to using pen and paper.
And what was the one critical flaw that allowed all of this to happen? You guessed it, a flat network. The ransomware was able to spread like wildfire across the entire company because there was nothing in its way to stop it. No digital walls. It just hopped from computer to server until the whole operation just ground to a halt.
That story is pretty terrifying, I know, but it also holds the key to how we move forward. So let's pivot away from that disaster and talk about a clear, actionable way to build up your own cyber resilience.
When you get right down to it, it's really about these 3 steps. Step 1, find your sensitive data. Step 2, figure out where that data actually lives, the servers, the databases, the cloud accounts. Those are your critical assets. And step 3, put the right controls in place to lock it all down.
And look, these controls aren't some kind of dark art. They are well-known fundamental security practices. We're talking about things like multi-factor authentication, making sure people only have access to what they absolutely need for their job, encrypting data everywhere, and having good modern security software on all your devices. These are the bricks and mortar for those digital walls we've been talking about.
So let's just end with this one final thought. In the world we live in now, your data isn't in one safe place. It's everywhere. It's on laptops and data centers, spread across who knows how many cloud services. So the real question you have to ask yourself is it protected everywhere?